Hi everybody, this is Joana Saahirah with another Juju live session. This time around about one of the biggest elephants in the room in the field of Egyptian dance, and I would say in the field of life, okay? Because these are subjects that mess us up when we're involved with Egyptian dance, but they mess us up anytime, every time in our daily lives. And those subjects, those elephants in the room, are sensuality and seduction. So, the big topic for this Juju live session, where I'm gonna answer the most frequent questions that I have received around this theme, they're gonna be focused on these particular polemic subjects that usually dancers don't like to talk about, okay? Teachers don't like to talk about it. They don't know how to talk about it. Also, sometimes they don't approach the issue of sensuality and seduction within the area of Egyptian dance because they don't know how to position the subjects, okay? But I believe they are keys to understanding what is Egyptian dance, why we can use it in so many different ways and in so many different levels, and also how through Egyptian dance we can redefine our concept of sensuality and vitality and pleasure and joy and happiness, and at the same time clean certain prejudices and myths and stories that surround Egyptian dance. So I want to welcome you to join me live. I'm here with my coffee, as I do, okay? And forgive me if I drink too much coffee today. It's been a tiring month of January, and it's been a tiring years, decades. So I need my coffee. And before I bring you the answers to the most frequent questions around the themes of sensuality and seduction in Egyptian dance, I'm going to present myself as I have to do. So for the ones who don't know me yet, my name is Joana Saahirah. I'm a world-renowned Oriental dancer, teacher, choreographer, author, and I'm also the creator of the pioneering Joana Saahirah's World and Joana Saahirah's Online Dance School, delivering authentic Egyptian dance, personal discovery, and empowerment. I will invite everyone to check our newsletter, Joana Saahirah's World newsletter, and our free learning page at our official website if you want to know more about authentic Egyptian dance and sensuality and self-confidence and creativity and so many beautiful things that we teach at our platform. More about that at the end of this live session. And now, without further ado, let's dive into the questions and I'm gonna read them, okay? So the first question I selected for this particular Juju live session is not really a question, it's more like a clarification, okay? And that is, what is the difference between sensuality and seduction, right? So before I can share the questions I have selected and before I can answer them clearly in a way that is actually helpful to you, I have to clean up the room first, all right? So the first thing we gotta tackle is sensuality the same as seduction? Do you think they are the same? Let me know in the comments to this live, okay? Either if you're joining me live or if you're gonna watch this video in the recorded format. Is that the same, sensuality and seduction? Are they the same thing, the same experience for you? Yes or not? I'm gonna give you my experience and my perspective, okay? So sensuality and seduction are quite different phenomena, all right? Sensuality is something that I do for myself. Seduction is something I do for another person, to affect another person. When I am allowing myself to dive into my sensuality, may that be in my daily life or in my dance, I'm doing it for my own pleasure. I don't have a target. I'm not trying to attract someone. I don't have a goal outside of my own pleasure. I don't have a purpose outside of my own enjoyment. The purpose of sensuality is to enjoy myself, right? It's something I do for me, not for someone else. Seduction is something you do for someone else. So I use anything I can, and Egyptian dance is something that you can use to seduce, as you can use jazz, tango, salsa, classical ballet, monkey business, whatever. We can seduce, we can affect, a target, someone that we want to magnetize, someone that we want to attract in very different ways. You don't need Egyptian dance for that, okay? In fact, if you need Egyptian dance to seduce someone, I don't think you're in a good spot, okay? So we don't need Egyptian dance to seduce anyone. We can seduce someone using different tools, different strategies, nothing to do with sensuality. So what Egyptian dance teaches us, at least the Egyptian dance I learned in Egypt, the Egyptian dance I investigated and researched and practiced in almost a decade of career in Egypt, and another decade of traveling the world and teaching and performing and observing and learning with my students and learning with other teachers and learning with the best of the best in my field. What this kind of Egyptian dance teaches us is about sensuality. It does not teach us about seduction. Now, obviously, you can use Egyptian dance as you wish. That's your decision. But let's not confuse the dance from the dancer, with the dancer, okay? Those are different things. The dance is one thing, the dancer is another thing. If I decide to use Egyptian dance to seduce someone, it speaks about me. It doesn't speak about the dance, all right? So sensuality is an ability to enjoy life. Let's put it this way, okay? How am I sensual when I'm dancing? I dive into my muscles, I dive into my bones, I enjoy my breath, I enjoy the music, I take pleasure in what I'm doing, not to attract someone, not to affect someone, not to seduce someone. I couldn't be bothered, but to enjoy myself, to feel more alive, to feel more vibrant, to feel like I'm actually experiencing whatever I'm experiencing fully. This is true for dance, it is true for life, and this is why I teach my students that when you develop your sensuality in Egyptian dance, you are developing it for your life. And that means you will be way more awakened to the pleasures of life, way more aware of them, way more present in the pleasures and the joys of your life. And this can be life-changing, because suddenly you start to take pleasure in eating, you start to take pleasure in personal relationships, in touch, in smelling the roses, literally and metaphorically. You start to take pleasure out of small tasks that otherwise would pass you unnoticed. So sensuality is a gift to yourself. It's something you do for yourself. It has nothing to do with having a target that you want to seduce, you want to attract, you want to impact. That is seduction, okay? And the Egyptian dance that I know, love, respect, teach, and practice is one that invites me to allow my sensuality to bloom. It's not one that tells me this is what you do to seduce someone, all right? So that is the first distinction. Now, I will start with a question, which is like another big house cleanup, which is why is Egyptian dance so deeply associated with seduction? And let's not kid ourselves. If you have been involved with Egyptian dance as a student, as a teacher, as someone who is, curious about remotely, if you have been remotely involved with Egyptian dance, you know what I'm speaking about. If you dare to tell someone that you practice Egyptian dance, what people erroneously call belly dance, even if you don't do it professionally, what is their comment? What is their reaction? Is, something naughty, something forbidden, something seductive, something a little bit guilty, like a guilty pleasure. I didn't know you were so naughty. Tell me more. Okay? You know it's true. You know it's true. And I'm not only speaking about Egypt, I'm speaking about the entire world. It doesn't matter where you are. If you tell someone, I practice Egyptian dance, I study Egyptian dance, or I am an Oriental dancer, oh boy. you are in for a treat if you dare to say the word. It's like the forbidden word. Egyptian dance. Ooh, all right. So we know there is a very strong association between Egyptian dance and seduction, right? Now, the big question is why, right? Why? And it is hard to tell you about this in a short Q&A session like this one, because I have other questions to answer. But I'm going to give you a few lights that I think are going to help you understand why this dance is surrounded by this image, okay? The first reason is historical, all right? And then again, a lot of dancers don't know the history, or if they do know the history, they prefer to ignore certain parts of the history because they are uncomfortable. As I usually say, you know, it's better to be honest, and it's better to face the demons than pretend they're not there. Because when you pretend the demons are not there, the elephants in the room, when you keep those skeletons in the closet, they grow. They become more powerful, and we don't want that. I don't want another generation of Oriental dancers to be treated like exotic stripteasers. Halas, enough. Kifaya, yani. In Egyptian, say kifaya. Halas, enough. Enough. Kifaya. Right? So we have to understand the source of the problem. It's not about saying, oh, people are ignorant, people think that if I'm an Oriental dancer, I am a stripteaser. They associate Egyptian dance with seduction and nasty things. Okay, we all know that, but the big question is why? Why that happens? So we go to the source of the problem, right? To solve the problem. So historical reasons. We don't have registers of the history of Egyptian dance from the beginning, all right? We start to have registers of something that could be remotely connected to Egyptian dance in the Ba Khalif of the pharaonic culture. So we have walls with carvings, with drawings, with hieroglyphs that suggest something like a dance that could be related to the Oriental dance we now know nowadays, but we're not sure it's the same dance. We're not sure that's the root of the dance. So there is a huge part of the history of Egyptian dance that nobody knows about because it is not documented. We can only imagine, we can only presume. But we do have registers of Oriental dance as we know it today. The Oriental dance, the Raqs al-Sharqi, the Egyptian Oriental dance that we know today, from the 18th, 19th century on, okay? And from that point on, we have registers in Egypt specifically of two main classes of dancers, considered professional dancers. One, the Awalin, okay? The other one, Al-Khawazi. Awalin wal-Khawazi, okay. The Awalin whose name, whose meaning means learned women, educated women, instructed women, like sophisticated women. Lawalin, they worked in groups, in troops, and they were known as dancers, singers, musicians, poetry reciters. They were organized dancers that worked in groups, and they were educated. They mastered different areas within the entertainment business. Also, they performed exclusively inside the homes of the clients. They did not perform in public. They performed in the haram, in the area prescribed to women inside the homes of Egyptians. So that, combined with their educational background, their multi-skilled abilities, granted them a certain level of respect. Okay, not 100% respect. Let's be direct and honest. Okay, the Awalem were not 100% respect. Okay, even today in Egypt, I have heard while I was living and performing there expressions related to the Awalem in a pejorative way. with a negative connotation. So even Awelem were not considered highly respected women. But because they were educated, because they were multi-talented, multi-trained, and because they only performed indoors for women, they had a certain level of respect, a relative level of respect. Now the Hawezi, the gypsy dancers, they did not earn this respect because they performed in public. They earned whatever people threw at them, coins, whatever they paid them. They performed in front of men as well as women. And they are supposed to have associated the craft of dance with the craft of prostitution as well. Okay? So the start of this association between Egyptian dance and seduction and something forbidden, something haram, yani haram is an Islamic term, yeah, opposed to halal, which means forbidden by God. Something that is not legal according to the eyes of Allah, according to the eyes of God. And as you know, Egypt has been a Muslim country, majority of Muslim country for a long time, okay? So the Hawezi started to perpetuate, historically speaking, this association between Oriental dance and prostitution and seduction and the use of dance for sexual purposes, all right? Now, I know that dancers don't like to acknowledge this, but knowledge is power, right? And we have to know the past, honor the past, acknowledge it, and say, now we can do different, right? What happened in the past does not have to be what happens in the present. We can bring back the honor and the dignity and the beauty of the dance. We can, it's a decision. So there is the historical reason coming from the Hawezi and how they associated dance with prostitution. But there is also the reality that, in fact, nowadays in Egypt and perhaps in other countries, for sure in Lebanon, and maybe in Turkey, I'm not sure, but in Egypt and in Lebanon for sure, there is still an association between the craft of Egyptian dance, of Oriental dance, and prostitution. Why do I know that? Because I've been through the process of working in those countries. I moved to Egypt by myself. I started my career there by myself. I gathered my musicians. I auditioned. I dealt with everything that dancers usually don't have to deal because they have managers or impresarios, like buffers, intermediaries. So I did not have that buffer. I did not want that buffer for another reasons. I'm not gonna go there now. But one thing is for sure, I saw it with my own eyes. The craft of professional Egyptian dance in Egypt and in Lebanon, the two countries where I worked extensively. In Lebanon, way less time. Okay, I was a few months in Lebanon. In Egypt, I was years performing. So I know Egypt better than Lebanon, but in Lebanon it's the same. Okay, there is still a market that is highly competitive, very small. Nowadays, totally down, economically speaking, and a craft and an environment and a market where dancers are still offered prostitution proposals, either directly or indirectly. And what do I mean by prostitution proposals? You will get the job if you go out with this man. You will get the job if you become the girlfriend of the moment. You will get the job if you marry this person. You will get the job if this is what I call prostitution. So sometimes prostitution can be legalized. Okay? Many dancers dance convenient men in order to open doors for their career. This is a way of prostituting yourself. Other dancers go out with certain men in order to have a chance. So in my world of values, this is prostitution, okay? Some women may not consider it as such. It's their right. I'm sharing my values and my perspective. So that's another reason why Egyptian dance is still so associated with seduction, okay? And with something nasty, something forbidden, because in fact, there are historical reasons for that. And there are present circumstances and environments where that is a reality, okay? Now, there is a more subtle side of this subject, which is the sensuality of Egyptian dance that can be easily confused by seduction, okay? And for that, I'm going to tell you a story. A few years ago, I was still performing in Egypt, and a dear friend of mine, a Spanish dancer who has a school, a friend of mine, a student of mine, someone who has sponsored me, who has organized events with me several times in her city, she came with a group from Spain to watch me dance, right? And they watched me perform with my orchestra. This was at the Nile Maxim in Cairo. And at the end, she told me that her boyfriend at the time thought it was strange how I was seducing an Arab guy in the audience. And when she told me this, and she told me this later on in Spain when we met, she did not tell me in that particular occasion. I knew this a few months after the show. I asked her, really? What Arab man in the audience? I have no idea. I don't know. He saw you seducing an Arab man in the audience. I say, really? From my perspective, of course, I knew there was no seduction of anyone. I had no idea what Arab man he was talking about. But that was a projection that someone in the audience had made upon me. In this case, that was the boyfriend of my friend. And this is something that as an Oriental dancer, I witnessed again and again and again. Because we live in a world which is not comfortable with our own sexuality and our own sensuality, we don't know what to do with a sensual woman. We don't know how to deal with this. And Egyptian dance is sensual. It is not necessarily seductive, but it is sensual. It is a dance that deals with pleasure, deals with joy, deals with surrender, deals with freedom of movement and freedom of emotion and freedom of sensation. That is sensual. Freedom is sensual. Joy is sensual. When you're enjoying yourself, that's very sensual. And what I found out is that from the point of view of the audience, that is easily confused by seduction, because we don't know. Individually, collectively, we don't know how to deal with our sexual energy. We don't know how to deal with our sensuality. Most of us have terrible sexual lives. Most of us have very twisted ideas of what sensuality is. So when we see an Oriental dancer in the full exercise of her freedom or his freedom, we don't know how to do, what to think. And by we, I mean generally, okay, people, most people who watch Oriental dance, okay, they don't know how to deal with that energy. And what kind of energy am I talking about? I'm talking about the sacred sexual energy that is released through Egyptian dance, because there is a sexual energy that is released. Why? We activate all of our energetic centers and we come from a place of surrender, tarab, transcendence. We come from a place of being fully alive, body, mind, heart, and soul. We come from a place, as I mentioned, of absolute freedom. I am expressing myself freely and I'm enjoying it. And that is a manifestation of my sexual energy, because that's a manifestation of my life energy, my vital energy. And there would be an entire course around this theme if we had time, but we don't. So I hope this has helped you understand a little bit more why Egyptian dance is so confused, so mixed with the concept of seduction. It's not because it is a seductive dance, it's because it is a sensual dance and we don't know how to deal with it, aside from the other reasons I already mentioned, okay? And there is always a decision in our hands to make, right? Do I want to perpetuate this image that people have of Egyptian dance and Oriental dancers, or do I want to do it differently? It's our choice, okay? Now, is Egyptian dance a seductive art form? I think I've already answered this question, okay? Egyptian dance is a seductive art form if you wish to use it that way. Just like salsa is a seductive art form if I choose to use salsa to seduce someone. Just like classical ballet or modern dance or tango can be a seductive dance if I choose to use it that way. Okay? Again, remember that we cannot confuse, we cannot put in the same basket the dance and the dancer. Because the dance is here and the dancer chooses how she or he is going to use the dance. So I can have the most sophisticated, beautiful, poetic dance form. If I decide to seduce someone using that dance, I will. It doesn't speak about the dance, it speaks about me. And it speaks about my intentions. Okay? So stop confusing Egyptian dance with Oriental dancers. The dancers decide how they want to use the dance. They don't define the dance. Okay? What else? Can I use Egyptian dance to seduce my husband? I love this one. And when I say husband, we're talking about boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, lover, whatever, Can I use Egyptian dance to seduce him? Ooh, okay. Now, I think you should use Egyptian dance as you see fit, right? I mean, who am I to tell you, don't use Egyptian dance to seduce your husband? Who am I to tell you that, right? I mean, personally, I don't use Egyptian dance to seduce my man, but that's my choice. Okay, I feel I don't need it, right? But if someday I'm in the mood and I want to do it, why not? It is private. It is only between me and him, and I will put the conscious intention of using the dance to seduce him. It is a particular occasion when I'm choosing intentionally to use this art form to seduce someone that I love. It's beautiful. Why not? Now, then again, let's not make it the purpose of the dance. This is the point, is that when people ask me, Joana, can I use this to seduce my husband, to warm up my marriage? I've been asked this many times. And my answer is always divided in two parts. You can do whatever you want with whatever you want, all right? So then again, I don't control how people use the dance they learn. It's your choice and you're free to enjoy it the way you wish, okay? But at the same time, there is a danger here, because if we start promoting Egyptian dance as a tool for seduction of your husband, then we are perpetuating this image of Egyptian dance as a seductive art form. And it is not. Egyptian dance is a self-expression art form. Okay? Egyptian dance is something that Egyptians and people from all over the world have been using to express themselves and enjoy life and enjoy the moment and express sadness and happiness and loss and gain and to express their humanity since forever. That's it. That's it. Egyptian dance is not a seductive art form. Okay? It is not an exotic striptease flick. It is not, unless you make it so, but that's your choice. Okay? It speaks about you and your intention. It does not speak about the dance, all right? I'm going to repeat that until I die. Literally, okay? So, although you can use Egyptian dance to seduce your husband and to seduce whoever you want, don't make it the purpose of the dance, or don't believe that is the purpose of the dance, okay? You can use Egyptian dance to seduce your husband, you can use pole dance to seduce your husband, you can use tango to seduce your husband, anything, everything you want, but don't allow it to define the dance. And don't allow it to define the way you see the dance and the way you talk about the dance, because then you will be harming the ones who don't use it that way, right? If we perpetuate this image of Egyptian dance as a seduction art form, we are disrespecting the dance itself and the ones who practice it on an artistic level. Okay? So the private use of the dance, it's great. Do whatever you want with it. Have fun, okay? But be very careful with the way you talk about it and the way you present it, because you could be perpetuating the prejudice that is harming the dance and the professionals of the dance for centuries. All right. Now, what else? Is Egyptian dance suitable for children? And of course, in this question, there comes a trap, right? Because this question comes from a place of presuming that Egyptian dance is adult content, which is in itself an affirmation of something, right? If I say a dance is adult content, it means there is something there that is not palatable to children. It should not be delivered to children. Now, I have taught children, not extensively, but when I started my career in Portugal, before I moved to Egypt, I was hired by a very smart businesswoman who owned and still owns an acting school, Patricia Vasconcelos, that's her name. And she had this beautiful idea of creating courses for children, Egyptian dance courses for children. And she asked me, I was already teaching at her school, would you be up for it? Can you adapt the pedagogy and the method of teaching that you use with adults to children of 3 years old, 4 years old? I said, hell yeah, amazing. And it was one of the most beautiful, surprising experiences of my life. So I can tell you with all certainty, of course, Egyptian dance is for children. It's for men as well. It's for women. It's for old people. It's for young people. It's for anyone and everyone who wants to move, who can move. All right? Then again, we have to think of how we teach people, right? How do you teach adults and how would you teach children? There are certain things that I would teach an adult that I will not teach a child, okay? Certain things about self-expression that are easier to understand when you're teaching them to an adult have to be adapted when you're teaching a child. Or the knowledge of the body and the expression of the body, you will teach the same content within Egyptian dance to a child or to an adult, but in a slightly different way, with different exercises, different language, right? Because a child has a different view of the world and a different experience of our own body and a different concept of what is creativity. What is sensuality? What is sensuality for a child, for instance? How does it operate? What does it mean? When I taught the group of children that I taught back then, I remember that I told them about sensuality. They could not understand the concept sensuality, but I told them it's about you enjoying yourself. Can you be happy when you're dancing, even if you're not doing it perfect? Even if you forget a step, even if you don't know if it's right or left, can you enjoy yourself? Can you feel when your shoulder goes up and it feels good in your body? And they understand the experience. And they understand it from a pure, open-minded place that adults very often cannot understand. So yes, Egyptian dance is for children, Egyptian dance is for adults, Egyptian dance is for aliens, Egyptian dance is for men and women of all ages. In Egypt, in Arab countries, in the north of Africa, where Egyptian dance, where raqs al-sharqi is practiced socially, everybody dances. You will see men dancing, sometimes more than women. You will see old men and old women dancing. You will see children dancing. Of course you will. So remove this idea that this is a forbidden dance that is practiced in the haram of the sultan and the odalisque is sneaking through the curtains and seducing the sultan. This is a very outdated, mythical, old image that does not necessarily correspond to the truth anymore. Okay? A lot of these images also come from Orientalist paintings that have arrived to us from the Orientalist painters of the 18th and 19th centuries. The French and the English painters who traveled to Egypt and either saw, fantasized, or imagined scenes that were rarely happening or were not happening the way they picture them in those paintings. So allow your children to learn a new culture, a new dance, a new music, a new way of living, which is exactly what Egyptian dance can teach them. And clean that head of monkeys. We don't need those monkeys. They're very old, dusty monkeys, okay? Let's get rid of them. Yeah? Okay. So, what else? What else? Am I a serious Oriental dancer if I allow myself to be sensual? Okay. This one is a discussion I had very often with my dear mentor, friend, grandfather, Mahmoud Reda. We would argue and disagree in this particular point because he believed that Egyptian dance, Oriental dance, and a lot of what he did with the Reda troupe was a more respectable, cleaned up version of Raqs Sharki. And I believed that the only way to bring Raqs Sharki to the place where it deserves, it's not to clean it up, because there is nothing to clean. The only thing to clean is our heads, okay? But to bring the sensuality to the table, open, pure, absolutely natural, as opposed to presuming there is something wrong with it and removing it from the dance. Actually, I don't believe you can remove it from the dance, because even the music that we use for Egyptian dance is sensual. And you cannot dance something that you are not listening to, right? So there is a deep connection between movement and music in Egyptian dance. If the music is sensual, if the music is structured rhythmically, melodically, in terms of lyrics, to make you experience a sensual sensation, okay, there is no way your dance is not gonna follow suit. If you listen to Kulthum, considered the maximum reference of Egyptian music, like the highest development point, Kulthum, and I didn't finish my sentence, the highest development point of Egyptian music, okay? You will hear a lot of sensuality. Kulthum was extremely sensual in the way she sang, in the way she said the words, in her breathing, in her recitation, in the intention, in the things that she was communicating through the words and between the words. Extremely sensual, and anyone who tells you otherwise is either lying or does not understand Arabic, so they don't understand what's going on when they listen to Kulthum. But if they do understand Arabic, okay, and if they listen to Kulthum, they will tell you exactly what I'm telling you. There is a lot of sensuality in the content of the lyrics, in the way the lyrics are delivered, and also in the rhythmic and in the melodic structure. Okay? There are rhythms and there are melodic structures that are created to have an effect on the listener, a sensual effect. All right? So the dance comes from that music. Let's not forget. So absolutely, absolutely, you can allow your sensuality to bloom and be a serious, professional, artistic, beautiful, interesting, magnetic Oriental dancer. I would say that the more you bring that sensuality, not the seduction, but the sensuality to the table, the more you will feel empowered as a dancer. And the more other levels and dimensions of the dance will come to the surface, because it's all connected. When I surrender to pleasure in my dance, I also open up my mind, and I open up my emotions, and I open up the spirit that glues all of it together, right? So my dance becomes much more alive, much more vibrant, much more human. Yeah? So seduction is one thing. Sensuality is another. Seduction will put you in a box. It will minimize and shrink your dance. That's the intention. That's what you're doing. You're seducing. You're using this tool to affect someone, right? It shrinks you. It makes you smaller as a dancer, right? Sensuality is the opposite. It allows you to open up. Yeah? It allows you to bring the dance and to bring yourself to other levels, other dimensions that are absolutely beautiful and urgent. Okay? What else? What else? Okay. Is Egyptian dance haram? So this is a question that is usually shared by Muslims, because haram is a Muslim concept. I've already mentioned it here. Haram means literally forbidden, something that is unlawful according to the eyes of God and according to the eyes of Allah. The opposite of haram is halal, something that is allowed, something that is sanctioned by God, by Allah, something that Allah approves of. Okay, so haram is forbidden, halal is approved of. Is Egyptian dance haram? Because this is something that you will hear in Islamic countries again and again and again. So let's say Egypt, okay? In Egypt, Egyptian dance, raqs al-sharqi, is considered haram. And then again, this is something that people don't like to talk about because it's unpleasant, it's uncomfortable, but it is important to bring it to the table openly, okay? So in Egypt, raqs al-sharqi is considered haram, is considered forbidden by God. The exposure of women's bodies in public, the way Oriental dancers, professional Oriental dancers do, is considered haram, because the body of the woman, according to Islam, is supposed to be guarded from the eyesight of other men other than her husband and immediate family. Okay, so there is a double haram here. It's the dance itself that is considered haram, and professional Oriental dancers who present themselves publicly, exposing their bodies publicly, they're also considered haram. Okay, and this is a religious conservative perspective that comes and goes. All right, if we talk about Egypt of 1950s, 1940s, the beginning of the nationalism in Egypt, right after King Farouk was kicked off Egypt, right after the English, the last colonizers of Egypt, were kicked off Egypt, and Egyptians held their own identity and culture in their own hands for the first time in many centuries. If we talk about that specific part of the history of Egypt, Egypt was already Muslim, a majority of Muslim. Okay, so there are other religions in Egypt. We have a strong Coptic community, Christian community in Egypt. There used to be also Jews, all right? They're still there, but they're not accepted as they were before. This has to do with Israel and the war between Egypt and Israel, so I'm not going to go into that. But the idea is, for many centuries, Egypt has had a majority of Muslims. And the legal system of Egypt is highly influenced by Islam. It is not the Sharia that you see in Saudi Arabia, for instance, which is the religious law, but it is influenced by the Sharia, okay? So a lot of laws that define the lives of Egyptians and foreigners who live and work in Egypt are coming from this influence of Sharia, of Islamic law. Now, as I was telling you, if we look at Egypt in the 40s, in the 50s, Egypt was already a Muslim country, right? It was already a country with laws that were highly influenced by the Sharia, but the mentality, the economy, the culture of the moment situated dance in a different place, a little bit better. So I'm not saying that in the 50s or in the 60s or in the 40s, dancers were respected. I'm not saying that in that time, the time of the golden era, Samia Gamel, Naima Akif, all of those beautiful singers, Farid Al-Atrash, Said Al-Darwish, I mean, all these golden era icons, Badia Masabni, I'm not saying they were considered respectful. They were not. But they were way more considered and better treated and better paid than artists are today. And this has to do with the waves of conservative Islamic laws and Islamic opinions and Islamic trends that come and go from Egypt and in Egypt, all right? So if you talk to the majority of Egyptians, they will tell you, yes, we love Raqs al-Sharqi, bas yani haram. It is forbidden. We love it, but it is forbidden, which is one of the biggest contradictions of Egypt and one of the biggest, most interesting contradictions of Egyptians. We love it, we practice it, we watch it, we do it, we drink it, but it's forbidden. Okay? The question is, what is in your heart? Right? If you're an Egyptian dancer, if you're a Lebanese dancer, if you're a Chinese dancer, if you're a Portuguese dancer, independently of your nationality, independently of your religion, what is in your heart when you move? What is in your heart when you're dancing? What is in your heart when you listen to Kulthum, for instance, because I mentioned Kulthum before, and what is in your heart when you dance to it? What is it that you're bringing from within? Do you feel it is forbidden? Do you feel it is something wrong? Or do you feel at peace with it? Do you feel it is something beautiful and human and heart-centered? So we go back to the distinction between the dance and the dancer, right? Never confuse the dance with the dancer. It all depends on how you use the dance and what is in your intention when you're dancing, right? If I listen to Kulthum, let's say the beginning of Alf Layla Layla, Ya Habibi, Ya Habibi, Leilu Sana. I can listen to this and say, Allah, beautiful. And I dance with that same soulfulness. Or I can say, you know what? I'm gonna be the sexy kitten and I'm gonna use this to seduce this guy and the la la la. It's the same music, it's the same dance, but I use it in a different way, depending on what's in my heart. What is my intention? How much I respect the dance? How much I respect and love the music? And above all, how much I love and respect myself. Oh yeah, right? I hope I have answered these questions in a way that is illuminating, in a way that is informative and inspiring to you in some way, shape, or form, okay? If you want to know more about these subjects and many others around the themes of authentic Egyptian dance, personal discovery, and empowerment, I want to invite you to join our free newsletter, Joana Saahirah's World newsletter. When you do, you're the first to receive our offers, our gifts, our special promotions, our exclusive content that I only share with my community, my beautiful people. You will find the link to join us either in the description box below this video if you're watching the replay of the live session at Joana Saahirah's YouTube channel, or in the comments if you're watching this in my Facebook profile. I will also share the link to our free learning page at our official website, where you will find a lot of free content on Egyptian dance and personal development, content that I know will entertain you and educate you and inspire you to be, to dance, and to live according to your soul, who you are and who you want to become. It's gonna be great. Then again, you're gonna find the link to the free learning page either in the description box below this video or in the comments to this video if you're watching it in my Facebook account. Thank you for watching, my lovelies. Feel welcome to share your comments, share your questions. I promise to answer them in some way, in some place, somehow, okay? A big kiss, and I will see you very soon. Until then, mwah, mwah, mwah. 1,000 kisses and all my love.